You are in for such an amazing episode. I had the opportunity to connect with a very dear friend of mine. He's been my friend for over 25 years. He has had the most intense healing journey, and I can't wait for him to share it with you. But more importantly, he's one of the amazing speakers at our upcoming Life After Loss virtual retreat, which will be taking place this month, September 17th through the 20th. I want to personally invite you to learn more about from him and be able to ask him burning questions in his Q&A session. There will also be a VIP event where he'll be talking to us about taboo talks during grief, where we take a deeper dive and discuss areas around grief that no one wants to talk about. Murder, suicide, drug overdose. So be sure to take a moment and click the link in the description below and find out more about the free ticket to the Life After Loss virtual retreat. Hey, everybody, welcome back. This is part 2 to Letters to My Son in Prison with my favorite guest, Ken Guidroz. And we're going to continue on. We just are starting. If you guys haven't caught part 1, please go back and listen to it. We really break down how we got to having a son in prison and starting to write him letters. Can you finish that first letter? And then you decide to continue writing letters. Tell me about that urge to continue writing the letters.
So the real breakthrough letter was that when I channeled David, that's when I realized he and I could make this elegant connection in prison. Like we could actually rebuild or reconnect, because it had been 10 years of really almost no genuine connection. Because when you're dealing with an addict, they're never themselves, right?
Yeah.
It's like a non-person. That's why I think even sometimes parents can feel relief when their child dies or something, because they that person's dead and almost already, right?
They're no longer in pain. Yes. And
the person's
no
a shell, right?
Yeah.
And you almost, if it's real bad, I can even see how you would almost feel like it's a relief to them too, to be dead, because they're, anyway. So when I realized
I want to add in that, because we got a lot of grievers that say that they get embarrassed to say that. And I want to say to every griever who just heard that comment, that is how we do feel, a lot of us, when it is suicide, when it is drug abuse. And it is absolutely okay to feel that way. Know that they are no longer in pain. So yes.
And even when my son had broken down in prison, and I felt great, like I was like, whoa, what the heck just happened? How did, right? And I went and I drove home. So I hit the 101 and I had this weird feeling as I got on the highway. I was like, I'm actually more pissed at Lucas. And I get home, about a 45-minute drive. I get home and I'm like, come up to my office. I'm like, I'm really pissed. It was like his honesty let me be more honest with myself. And actually, when I journaled, I process things with journaling. That's just one of the most effective. Yeah. And a couple of days later, I ended up journaling, and I just said, I actually hate my kids. Mm-hmm. I actually wish I'd never had kids. Mm-hmm. And I remember writing that thinking, did you just write that? Are you right? And it's this admission of honestly how you feel. And it's funny, I wrote that a long time ago. I showed it to Joyce, and it wasn't until a couple nights ago, just like 2 days ago, we were talking, and she goes, you know what, when you wrote that in your book, that actually helped me, because I actually felt it, and I never would have admitted it to myself.
Yeah.
I was like, and I didn't say much to Joyce, because you don't want to get weird when you're with your wife.
Yeah.
I don't want to make things weird. But inside I'm going, for her to think that?
Yeah.
For her of all people on the planet Earth to think that?
Yeah.
Whoa. But anyway, so back to the letters.
But there's freedom in honesty.
There is.
There's freedom in telling the truth.
And I even think honesty begets honesty. In other words, if you're honest about that, you'll start being honest and say some scary things. And I don't know, I say either write them down or say them. Now, I deleted it.
Yeah.
I wrote it. but I'll be honest, I deleted it because I
Yeah.
never,
Yeah.
I journal on Google Docs, and I realized that probably my sons could read it one day if I
Yeah.
die. So I've deleted all the places where I ranted on them.
Yeah.
Anyway, but honesty begets honesty, and it brings, I think, even other layers of honesty. It's like an onion, where you peel it back and all of a sudden you find yourself being super, super honest, and maybe even exaggerating. I even think exaggerating is not a bad thing.
Oh, no.
Maybe say something that isn't even true and is beyond what's true, but maybe that helps you come to what's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because grief is a wily animal.
Yes.
You know this better than anybody.
Yeah.
Grief is a wily, it's this cagey, just crazy animal that there's no solution. And I know that you have insight in it, but I would imagine when you get with somebody, it's a whole new thing.
Yes.
If you counseled me, I'd be one way. If you counseled Joyce, she's another way.
100%.
And every client is a complete different animal.
And here's the other thing. You all were suffering the grief of Luke's experience. You were grieving differently than Joyce. Jess was grieving differently, and Chris was grieving differently.
True.
And so was the whole community, because every single one of us has a different relationship with Lucas. And so our grief showed up differently for him and everyone. So what happens a lot of times with grievers is they think they automatically get you and they understand you. But the truth is they don't, because their relationship with him is different.
Yeah.
And you had your own personal struggles you were going through.
Yeah.
Did you
so the letters?
Oh, go ahead. Did
so the letters. Once I realized David had connected so well with Lucas. Of course, the David story is perfect, right?
Yeah.
A man makes the mistake of his life. He is confronted. He's humble. He repents. He changes. He sees it. He doesn't defend himself, and he rebuilds his life. I mean, come on, for a kid a 30-year-old in prison, that's about as perfect a story. But I realized, though, that there was a spiritual connection I could make with Lucas, as well as a fatherly connection, right? That was the moment when I realized there was power in the letters. That's what you asked. You said, Ken, when was the moment? That was the moment. And so then that letter led to another letter. I did this, I channeled Adam and Eve. And how feisty Eve was, and how boring Adam was, and how, you know what I mean? And I had a lot of fun, and he kind of laughed about that. So I did all these letters, not just that stuff, but other stuff that was real and kind of just honest. I even told him about my life and my weaknesses and about my upbringing. And I mean, here's this kid that's got nothing but time on his hands, right? So he starts writing me these crazy letters, these long letters. He's, being open himself. It almost became this weird, portal, like this pipe through which we could almost be this weird self we never were in real life, and yet say things. It's really pretty cool the way it morphed.
It is an amazing story of healing, of the healing journey. Do you commit to writing a letter every day, or it was just as you were?
No, that's too much. At least for me. No, there was a period. So my dad got sick during this, so I actually went to Arizona, and there's a period in Arizona, I think a month or two, where I started every third day. I remember going to the mailbox all the time, and then he started writing me a bunch, and he was in this place called reception. So there's jail, there's reception, and then there's prison, right? So jail's where you're held until you're sentenced. Reception is where California holds you until they decide where to put you based on your sentence. And then prison is where you serve out the remainder of your sentence. So he was in reception, no visits, no phone calls, only letters, right? So that's kind of that was the tripwire that got us going.
Yeah.
I was in Arizona at the time, so I started writing him a bunch. He got nothing but time on his hands. Yeah. And reception doesn't have much in the way of libraries or programs. It's just this place where thousands of men are just sitting there with nothing to do. So once I learned that, I said, well, I'm going to write them a bunch of letters.
So may I ask, were the letters handwritten, or did you type them? And how were Lucas's letters?
All were typed, and all of his were handwritten.
Okay. All right. That was just an inquisitive question.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about your favorite letter. Is there a favorite letter?
Well, there was do you mind if I read it?
No,
I mean, just
not
a
at all.
section.
Yeah.
There was a letter where he wrote, and he had really made a change in his life, and he had finished a book. He started to to read a bunch. So when he got to prison, there was California has milestone programs where you can take a course, a college course, and shave off a month of your sentence. You could do this, take this program and shave off, because they have too many prisoners in California, way too many,
Yeah.
way too many.
Yeah.
So if you want to reduce a 10-year sentence, which Lucas got, you can just do all these programs and boom, and all of a sudden you have a 3-year sentence.
Yeah.
It's just what they do.
Yeah.
And so he did that. And so he starts to read and starts to learn, and his mind starts to go on fire. And we're writing letters, and he's reading books like Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, Dumas's Count of Monte Cristo, like deep stuff
Deep
that was
stuff.
really rich. He starts talking differently. We're on the phone, and he starts using words he's never used. Well, I visit with him on occasion, and we start taking these long talks. He starts talking about God, and he starts talking about evolution and how God and evolution can work together, and how, C.S. Lewis, he starts reading Mere Christianity and starts to really dig his logical approach to faith, and he just starts changing. So my favorite moment was when he had finished Crime and Punishment, and he was, I can't find it. I wish I had it, but so he puts the book on his chest. He says, "Dad, it was dark. Everybody was asleep. It's about midnight. I'm on the top bunk, and I have the book on my chest, and I start to think about my life, and I start to realize that, like the protagonist, the main character in Crime and Punishment, I too had died for my sins, and I too had started to come to this realization about my sin and about my life, and like he and Lazarus, I'm too was being raised from the dead, and I am okay with where I am. I'm okay with where my life is, and I'm going to be born again. And I read this, I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? It's a beautiful moment. I was down in my kitchen, the sun was shining in. I was at the bar down there, this breakfast bar, and it was a great moment of seeing that I hadn't had a positive thought about Lucas for a long, like,
Wow.
15 years. Think about this. 15 years.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, when I got that letter, I thought, it may happen. I can't let myself think it, but it may actually happen that this kid turns his life around.
He figures it out, and he turns it around. Wow, beautiful. Can at some point you decide to put this into a book? Tell me about that. Okay, friends, let's take a brief break right here. I want to share something with you. If you're grappling with the heavy weight of long term grief, the kind that feels like it's consuming every part of your life. And now that I say that, what grief doesn't feel like it's consuming every part of your life? I'm talking about the pain of losing someone you love that's affecting your zest for life, your energy, your relationships with your spouse, your parents, or your children. As a grief specialist, I want you to know that you're not alone on this healing journey. Grief can cast a long shadow, but there's a path for healing. There is a true path for healing. And I've designed something very special for you. I want you to take a look at you, the griever. My partner, Joy Renique of Celebrate Legacy, and I have curated a transformative 3-day retreat, especially for those who are suffering from grief after the loss of a loved one. Anyone trying to move towards healing. The best part is, it is completely free. The virtual retreat is called Life After Loss, and we've assembled a remarkable team of experts who truly understand your pain, your heartache, and your longing for healing. They are also true grievers, and they've been on this journey before you. They're not going to only share from their own experience, but they're going to give you a safe place to grieve. And they will educate you about the grieving healing journey and give you actionable steps to move towards healing. I will also be speaking at this event. And the topic of my subject is, does grief have an end? Don't let grief continue to hold you back. Take the courageous step towards healing right now. Just click the button, the link that I have in the show notes, to get your free ticket to the retreat. Your journey to healing begins with a single click. I can't wait to meet you virtually at the retreat, where together we'll take these first steps toward a brighter future. You can also head over to grieflegacy.net/retreat or click the link below in this podcast description to save your free tickets. Your path to healing is just a click away, my friend. Because you're writing the letters for you and him and your healing journey and your recovery. You weren't writing this to write a book.
Not at all. In fact, that moment when I had my first positive thought, I actually remember that. Because think about it. You think you've lost your son. You think you've lost a loved one. And in many ways, you have lost them. And then all of a sudden, something happens and this turnaround. So that was a tipping point. But then, of course, there's a lot more progress. And he writes the widow on the second anniversary of the accident. He writes this beautiful, beautiful letter that an earlier Lucas could never have written, but an educated, mind on fire Lucas can write. And a man who has been to where David was, has been broken, has been redeemed. That man can write this letter. And I saw it. This was that letter to that widow. And so it was these series of events that, and the talks, we had some meetings. We read a book on there's a beautiful book by Francis, is the last name, the past president of the NIH under Biden and Trump and Clinton and all the way back to Bush. So the guy that headed the science department wrote this book. He's a Christian. He wrote a book on evolution and God that Lucas and I read together. We read it simultaneously and had these amazing talks about God. Because Lucas, for him, evolution was a sticking point. It was one of those things that in prison, I believe in God. But everybody believes in God in prison.
Yes. Yeah.
Under duress, of course. But
yeah.
When you're out, you rebuild your life, you just say, oh, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
So I knew that evolution was a big deal. So anyway, we do this joint thing. So it's all these things we do together that start to lead to this optimism that this kid may change. And this may actually be a story of redemption, not a story of just pure tragedy. So yes, it was sometime during that. I don't have an exact date where I go, what if this was a book?
What if this was a book?
I don't. I just don't. I wish I did. That would be such a cool story. Maybe I should make it up, Sharon. Wait, let's do it together. Let's make it up.
We'll add it in there. But you're going to use this book, not use the book. Tell me more about, now you shared with me, you and I were talking the other day and you said, this is my personal ministry now. This is Joyce and our personal ministry. And we now go into jails and we visit other prisoners that are suffering. Share a little bit about that. How did that come about?
I mean, that's super recent,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because the inclination to write a book about it is one thing, right? That birthed over some years, right? Things start turning around. He and I start having these just off the charts conversations. So that's birthed.
Yeah.
But then doing that's another thing, right? Writing a book is challenging.
Yes.
I thought I was a decent writer, but writing a book is a long process. It took me 7 years because you got to become a writer first. You got to learn how to write. Because I didn't want to just write a book that my family reads and Sharon Brubaker reads.
Right.
Okay. And again, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to write that book.
Yeah.
It's a kind of a family project. I wanted to write a book. And as I start learning to write, I wanted to write a book that would help other people, that would be a good book, that would have tension, that would have narrative vibe to it, that would have good dialogue, that would have You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Scenes that are gripping, scenes that are interesting, scenes that other parents can relate to, etc. Right? But getting that is hard. That takes
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Classes, counseling, coaching, experimenting, beta readers, critiques. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but I committed to it. And it was a little evolution. I wasn't sure what I wanted, and so a year, 2 or 3 into it, I start to kind of realize some of the friends that you and I know together read it, and we're like, hey, it's interesting, but that ain't a book. Okay, or it's just you writing a bunch of letters, right? There's not the story. There's no story there. And so I was okay. I'll go back and so writing it. So writing a book that I don't know if this is true yet. I'll tell you at the end of next year, that I think is compelling and interesting. That's hard.
Yeah.
But once you get there and you start getting feedback, and so Joyce and I have shared the prologue to the book with 400 or 500 people over the last month or two. And the feedback we've gotten is what led us to what you just asked about.
Yeah.
So everybody responds to this with their own son in prison. It's not actually a son, but it's the death of a son or a death of a daughter, the overdose of his daughter, a bitter divorce that really brought them to their darkest hour, a bankruptcy that was exceedingly embarrassing, whatever. Right? You have your trauma, Sharon. I have my trauma, but everyone has their own trauma. For some people, it's dramatic. For some, it's less dramatic, but it's the son in prison. And so Joyce and I share, Joyce, reaches out to old high school friends and they launch into their story. I share with this person. He launches into his story. You know what I'm saying? So we finally realize, wow, we have something to say to the world.
Yeah.
Maybe our recovery can be instrumental to them, to someone else. And so we start to I started to elicit input and just, hey, pose a question to me. I heard what you just said. Can you just write it out? And then I would write them a response. So one guy said, a guy I don't even know that well, he's a CPA that I work with. He goes, you know what? I feel like I'm going to be a terrible dad. I had a horrible dad and I now have a son and I don't want to be a sucky dad. I want to do well. I want to not let my horrible upbringing, and I see him being bullied and I see this and I see this. So I wrote him this letter, this impassioned letter about how to not be a horrible dad. In my 2 cents, I'm not saying I know. It's just my 2 cents. And he just responded in his amazing, so anyway, it was those kind of things that made Joyce and I realize that we do have a ministry. We do have something we can give to the world. What exactly, Sharon, that looks like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm starting a newsletter. Once a month, I'm going to answer a letter from my readers. Once a month, I'm going to answer a letter from my own son. Yeah. One of my sons said, hey, Dad, should we have a kid now? Should we wait? Jess, my oldest son, said, hey, Dad, I feel like I'm raising my son and I want him to be a man, but it feels like everything in this world is kind of telling him to be no more neutral than masculine.
Yeah.
What do you think? So anyway, I'm going to do that. I wrote the book. I'm going to write the newsletter. Will it be something? I don't know.
Yeah.
Might it be? It could. I hope it will be.
So beautiful. And I probably should have asked this question I love this. I love every bit of it. Did the letter writing help the other boys as well and the family as a whole? How did it help everybody together with the healing? Or did everybody do their own journey?
I mean, in a way, the letter writing and the writing of the book.
Yeah.
Because remember, the letters were just to Luke. Yeah. They didn't even know about them. They hadn't read any of the letters.
They didn't know any of them. Okay.
I mean, right? These are just letters that are sitting in my file cabinet, right?
Okay.
I mean, I might have shared that we were doing it, but I wouldn't give them a letter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I should have, but I didn't. Yeah. So as this evolution starts happening and I start telling them about this, of course, they were digging it.
Yeah.
By this point, both of my sons had recovered, right? They're building their lives. They're doing well. We're all close again. We're playing pickleball on Sunday afternoons, and then we would get together and I would share with them kind of what I'm learning about myself, my parenting. I'd tell him about a scene I wrote, about a letter Lucas had written me. And even eventually, Lucas was part of this. We would sit in the jacuzzi after playing pickleball. And we would just sit there and talk. And we had these amazing talks. So were they included not early, but later? And I think that, they want to help people.
Yeah.
My boys, right? We as a family want to help people. And they realize that it's a little painful, especially to Lucas. He wishes this would go under the carpet, right? He just wishes it would never see the light of day on one side. A bigger part of him is fine with this. And and I've talked to him about it a dozen times from, when it became the idea hatched right before he got out of prison to 2 weeks ago. I'm presenting his signed copy of the book today to him. This afternoon we have a big family get together. So
beautiful.
I'm going to pull him into a side room and I'm going to present it to him, and I'm just it'll be a tearful event, but he's supported it. Again, he wishes it probably never would see the light of day. But the bigger part of him wants to see it. So it has been a family thing. And now just in the last couple of months, it's become a Joyce thing. Much more so, because of all of her friends.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Tell our listeners where they can find you and where they can start getting this newsletter and when the book comes out. And
if you want to do this, Sharon, one thing we haven't really talked about much is the spiritual part of this. I would love to have another session because because you and I have a spiritual connection. That was in some ways the richest part of this whole thing. Was the mourning and the grieving I had with God, because it was just, it was uncanny how it turned around and how it happened, and the way the role music played, and the role music played in it. Without music, I'm not sure it would have happened, as crazy as that sounds.
So do you have time? Do you have 10, 15 minutes?
I do.
Okay. So tell us when the book comes out and how they can find it.
It comes out September 6th. Audio, I narrated the audiobook. Paperback, I had Kevin Costner in the wings, but then I decided to do it myself. I'm just kidding. Liam Neeson, of course, I probably would have let Liam Neeson. I think he could have narrated it. I could listen to that guy read the phone book and I would just be entranced. But anyway, so audio, paperback, and ebook, of course, September 6th. KenGuidroz.com, that's where everything is.
Perfect.
The new sign up for the newsletter, book, et cetera, et cetera. And it's available everywhere. So, yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, friends, hang on because we really want to keep this conversation going. We'll see you on part 3. Thank you, my friends.